What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are installing fog lights the easy way on our truck. Now today we're actually doing it on the 2020 Chevrolet Silverado. You can do this on other vehicles pretty much this way. The wiring might be a little bit different, so we're going over the wiring specifically on this truck. It might be the same way on your vehicle. I don't know. In concept, it'll be the same way. The different colors of wiring will probably be a little bit different, but the concept is still the same. I've done this video other time installing different fog lights. It was like off-brand fog lights that I've put on this truck that weren't really that great. I ended up taking them off, and for a period of time I didn't have fog lights, and then I got new fog lights. We'll go over that in a second. And I pretty much did it the same way, and it's not a bad way to do it, but you don't have to worry about doing like a fog light switch, adding a fog light switch, adding a different switch on your console or anything like that. So if you've got a nice vehicle that you like, but you want to add fog lights but don't want to add a switch or make it look weird on what you've already got, this is pretty much what I did. It's pretty much the same thing. I've got a fairly nice truck that I recently got. It didn't come with fog lights. I wanted fog lights on it, but I didn't want to add a off-brand aftermarket weird looking switch somewhere on the dash to make it look weird. I wanted it to blend in and look as simple as possible, like it came from the factory like this. And I did it, and this is how I did it. So before we get too into this video, this is a 2020 Chevrolet Silverado pickup 1500. Like I said, I did this to this vehicle. In concept, it's the same thing. The wiring, colors of wiring might be different, so you might have to look up different wiring diagrams to make this possible, but this whole concept is possible. So we're going over how I did it, the simplest, the easiest way to do this in this video. You might have to look up a wiring diagram to do exactly what I did if you didn't do it on this specific vehicle, but it is possible. So I'm going to talk about what I did, how I did it, and you'll be able to do this to your vehicle too. Granted, if you're not doing this to this particular vehicle, you might have to look up a different wiregram to see what colors might be different, to see what wire you might have to tap into. But we're going over exactly how I did it to this vehicle, and here's how I did it. So a little bit of a backstory. I did do a video on this topic already. I bought a 2020 Chevrolet Silverado pickup, which didn't have fog lights, which really weird. And I really wanted the fog light feature on this truck. It makes the truck look completely different. Really like it. Some guys might think it's stupid or whatever, but I bought a nice truck. It didn't have fog lights. Really irritated me personally. Really looked into getting fog lights for this truck, and I bought this truck pretty much when it first came out, and looked into getting fog lights and looking at getting fog lights from the dealer and getting fog lights and pretty much doing it myself. I was still pretty much looking at real close to $1,000 when I first got this truck, which was completely out of the question. I really wanted fog lights, but not that bad. So I put the whole thing off and decided, all right, I'll get different aftermarket fog lights, which didn't really fit the truck, but I could fit in the hole that the fog lights go in, and went ahead and made a mount for the truck for these particular lights, and then wired it up like I'm going to do in this video. I ended up not really liking the lights, and they were cheaper lights, and they were LED, but real cheap off-brand type stuff, and ended up not really liking it. After I got them installed and wired in, you know, they kind of like dim over time and everything and look kind of trashy. So I ended up taking them off. And in that video I previously did, I'll put a link up in the description and up on the screen here, the wiring of it is going to be the same. So if you want to check that video out or just stay in this video, I'll put that link in the description or up on the screen. It's pretty much the same type of video. So what makes this video different, if you're interested in this particular vehicle, the 2020 Chevrolet Silverado, I actually waited probably about a year-ish, a little bit more, and waited until different companies came out with the particular fog light that fits in the fog light socket on this particular video. Found it on Amazon, and before, the pretty much cheapest you could find it, roughly around $1,000, low end maybe $800 or $700, but was really out of the question for me because I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money. I mean, we're just talking about fog lights here. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on this, so I waited. Finally, a bunch of companies came out with fog lights on Amazon, and you can get the fog lights from Amazon for this particular vehicle for right at $100, a little over $100. I think the lowest I possibly found when I was looking at it was like $115, and I went ahead and got it with that. It's like some, I think it was like a Chinese brand, which isn't necessarily a bad thing with this. So I spent like $115 for the fog light set for this particular vehicle, and went ahead and got it. And it came with the fog lights, fit really well, and everything worked great. So it came with the fuse and all the wiring that you need to make this possible in the kit that I got, just for $115. Might be a little bit more if you're watching this video, might be a little bit less compared to when you're watching this video, but you're going to be able to find this kit for around $100. So the first thing I did was I installed the lights. Now, like I said, I previously installed lights, ended up not liking how they looked and everything. I pulled them out. I made a mounting plate, which if you're interested, you can check out on the other video I did on the subject. I ended up taking that bracket that I made off and went ahead and installed these new lights. They fit perfectly in this vehicle. And the one weird thing is that these fog lights mount in this particular truck with 3 screws. And if you got this vehicle with no fog lights, it's got a cover that goes over it and it mounts with 3 screws. When I got this new fog light set, it came with 3 screws for each, which were completely different screws. I don't know what happened there, but the screws don't match. So what I ended up doing when I mounted the fog lights on there, I used the screws that mounted the cover on there. I used those to mount the lights on there, because I didn't have any other screws, and the screws that they sent were completely different. I don't know what that is. It's some Chinese crap. I don't. So the screws that I had that mounted the cover on there the new screws didn't work out. So those screws that I took off of the cover, I put those back on that light. They fit fine. They're okay. You don't have to worry about that. It's 3 screws holding it on, so you don't have to worry about them falling off or anything like that. So I went ahead and put those 3 screws that held the cover on, I used those to mount the light back on the vehicle. So then I got the fog lights mounted on the vehicle, fine, everything's okay. Now the next step was the wiring. Now for this particular set that I got, they sent a fog light switch, or a light switch with it. And the switch actually had a on-off light on it like some switches do, to where if it's on, it's got a light on it, probably green or whatever, and then if it's off, it'll be red. So the switch actually has power to it all the time. And not all kits or switches are going to be like this. With this particular one, this is what I got. So with this switch, it always had power to it. So on this particular switch, it had a red, black, and white wire going to the switch, and it had a wiring harness connected to the kit that I got. So I didn't want to do a separate switch on this. I wanted it to work in the truck to where I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to look at it or anything weird, obscure on the dash or anything like that. So what I did was I completely bypassed the switch. And when I bypass the switch, you still have to worry about the wiring because it's wired for a switch. So you've got a red, black, and white wire. The red is power, the black is ground, and then the white is actually the power going to the fog lights itself. So what I did was I cut the white wire, which is the power going to the fog lights, and completely got rid of the switch there. So when I got rid of that, I went ahead and wired up the fog lights itself. So then after I installed the fog lights, I ran the red wire, which has the fuse and everything all together. Usually when you get these kits, I ran the red wire to the positive terminal on the battery, and then the black wire, which is the ground, which you can wire to the negative terminal on the battery, or you can wire it to a ground on somewhere on the truck, which is what I did, which was easier for me. It doesn't really matter what you did, and that's what I did. And then the white wire, I had to figure out where I wanted to hook it to, which actually makes the lights come on. So for this particular setup, I wanted to not worry about turning on the fog lights. I wanted the fog lights to come on with the low beams, and particularly go off with the high beams. Now with this particular truck, the low beams come on, and when your high beams come on, the low beams stay on. So in this particular truck, the fog lights are going to stay on when your high beams come on. That's something to think about. If, you know, most of the time when you cut your low beams on, your fog lights come on. When you cut your high beams on, the fog lights go off. That's something to think about. I wasn't particularly worried in what I did here. So if you're worried about this, this probably isn't going to work. So if you're okay with that whole premise of fog lights coming on with your low beams coming on, if your lights are automatic like mine are on this truck, when your lights come on when it's dark, your low beams will come on and my fog lights will come on. Even if your high beams come on for any other reason, they'll stay on. If that's not a big problem for you, let's get into how I did this. So for this particular truck or vehicle, I was able to discover which wire actually was the power to the low beam headlights. Now, as I said, I've gone over this on the video I previously did on the original fog lights on this truck, which were aftermarket lights. Going over all of this stuff in that previous video, but we're going over it pretty much all again in this video here. So what I did was I took all of the wires out of one of the headlights. On this particular truck, it's almost all LEDs. So the whole headlight harness has got a lot of wires coming off of it. So I unplugged that and checked which wire had power to it when the low beam headlights came on. So I finally discovered this yellow wire on this particular truck was the low beam headlight wire. When your automatic lights are set and your low beams come on, this is the wire that sends power to the low beam headlights. So then once I found that wire, I don't always recommend doing these tie-ins. It's the blue harness where you take, like we cut the white wire off and you're going to take a wire and stick into this blue harness, and then sit this harness over the wire that you're trying to tie into and clamp it on and squeeze it real tight, and it ties into that wire. They're not great for long-term things. I've used them a bunch of times. I don't always recommend them for everything because you're probably going to eventually having problems with it. But I did it on the last one. I did it on this one. I'll worry about if I have problems down the road. Most people go ahead and do this because it's a quick fix. A lot of times you don't really have issues with it, but sometimes you do. So I use that for this setup, and that white wire that we cut off of the switch. You had a red, black, and white wire. The red went to the positive terminal of the battery, and the black went to either the negative terminal on the battery or somewhere grounded on the vehicle. And the white wire is actually the power to the lights. That white wire is what we actually tied into this yellow wire on the truck to set the fog lights turn on when the low beam lights come on. So I went ahead and tied that white wire into this wire on the lights. Granted, if you're working on a different vehicle, that wire color is going to be a little bit different. You can look up a ton of different diagrams online. That's how I figured out what wire I needed to tie into on this particular vehicle. And once I did that, my fog lights, when I started the vehicle and turned the truck on, if the low beams came on, my fog lights came on. And then for this particular vehicle, like I stated earlier, the high beams come on, they stay on, because low beams go, they stay on. It might be different for different vehicles, I don't know. But this is the easiest way to do this, where you don't have to worry about wiring up a different switch, have to install a different switch on your dash or anything like that. This is the easiest way to pull this off. So now that I got all of that wired in, I was able to stick the fuse away where I wanted. It doesn't really matter how you do that, as long as you tuck it away to where it's not gonna get yanked out somehow or anything like that. And that's the easiest way to install new fog lights on a vehicle that didn't have fog lights originally. It is an extreme pain in the butt if you got a new vehicle from a dealership that didn't have fog lights originally on it. It's not going to be like a brand new vehicle that did have fog lights. Usually you have a vehicle that has a complete switch with fog lights in the switch, where you can push a button to turn the fog lights on and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to do that if you do it this way. You usually get, like I did, a separate switch that you can turn your fog lights on and off, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted the truck to look exactly like it came internal on the inside in the cab, like it did when I got it. I didn't want to look at anything weird, not from the dealer. So I went ahead and wired this up to where it had fog lights on the outside that worked properly, but I didn't have to worry about looking at anything weird in the cab. So I went ahead and wired it up this way to where I don't have to worry about turning the fog lights on and off. It just comes on automatically. If you've liked this idea, it's great. I like this idea. I don't like worrying about looking at something weird and have to turn something on and off. It's great for me. It passes inspection, at least where I am in most cases, so I don't have to worry about it. And it's an extremely cheap way to really upgrade your vehicle and not have to pretty much worry about anything. So this is the easiest way to install fog lights on a nice vehicle that you got that you don't really want to make look weird with adding switches and stuff. If you like this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up, and be sure, if you do anything else, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you checked out the other video, it's pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that I got the proper fog lights for this particular video. Wiring and everything is identical. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. And be sure to get subscribed to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss anything on the channel. I do a lot of upgrade videos and kind of DIY stuff, all of my project stuff, most of the project stuff I do videos on the channel. I do a lot of other content on the channel. So if you're interested in anything on that, be sure to get subscribed and ring the bell so you don't miss anything. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. A lot of stuff I post on there, sometimes it doesn't quite make it to the YouTube channel. A lot of the stuff on Instagram you'll see a little bit before you actually see it on YouTube. So if you're interested in checking that out, be sure to follow me on the Instagram at The Josh Wiley Channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, ring the bell, follow me on Instagram. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.